Good morning once again. At some unearthly hour of the morning for most of you. And you're probably asking yourself, what the hell's he doing standing at a bus stop? Well, he ain't waiting for a bus, that's for sure. Although there is a bus every 2 hours during most of the day. Today, on a Sunday, which is really unusual. What I'm actually looking at is where a bus shelter used to be. I don't know when they took that away. But anyway, we're in Snagshaw. Snagshaw, however you want to pronounce it. The sun is on its way up, but it's still only about 5:10 in the morning. And I'm in deepest rural Sussex, East Sussex, once again. Can't seem to get away from it. And there is the signpost. The buses come up from Bodrum, turn right and go behind me up towards Staple Cross, and to the left is where we'll be heading this morning, Ewhurst Green. But here I am on my own with the sounds of nature, wood pigeons all over the place, crows, rooks. Lovely view this morning over the Rother Valley there towards Bodrum Castle, and in actual fact I think that's probably the castle there, just above the skyline, although the one of them occasions when it's a bit blurred because there's I think you can just make out castle turret. Anyway, never mind. That isn't really what I came here to see, but I just thought I'd put that in as an aside. Because before I go into Ewhurst, I wanted to show you a couple of things. There's some lovely old buildings here. Typical Sussex white weatherboarding. But there's one in particular that I'm looking for. We're only just on the border of Ewhurst Green here. We're going a little bit further along, but there's a property I wanted to show you. And you'll find it a rather unusual property. I haven't driven along here because I don't want to disturb the people that live here, but I couldn't pass this point without actually showing it to you. You see it right on the edges of Ewhurst Green. And I just heard a woodpecker. But you see this rather unusual property here. I'll be careful because there are windows open. It's like it's a bow front. You see that? It's a Grade 2 listed property. It's called the Rope Walk. It dates back to the very early 19th century. Very unusual features, especially this sort of bay window in the middle there. And you look at it, it's on 3 stories, and you think maybe there was a factory there at one time. And I understand that it more than likely was a rope factory in years gone by. I'm not going to walk any further, but alongside it is another lovely cottage. Of course, people have got their windows open because it's been so warm, making filming rather difficult, but I'm just going to pan very gently along to show you what a lovely cottage that is. And now we're going to go into Ewhurst Green proper. But actually, as I walk back, we'll just have a sideways glance at the old rope factory that's now turned into, well, I guess it's probably one house. Need a large family to live there though. Well, we're just in Ewhurst Green itself now. There's a lovely playground just behind the hedge in front of me. However, what I've come to look at, there is a lovely view again out over the Rother Valley. And I'm standing here and I've lost it. Where am I looking for? Let's see. Come back a bit. That's what I'm looking for. No, it's not. This is ridiculous.
I like to leave these bits in sometimes because I'm sure some of you out there think I'm absolutely daft. You can see what I'm actually looking for. I can't. And any of you, I should think all of you, because you can't seem to buy anything else these days, who use these video cameras. Now mine is a great camera, but it's let down by the LCD screen because the slightest bit of light across it and I can't see a damn thing, and so I'm desperately trying to move this thing around and get the light off and see where the image is, and in the meantime you can see the camera going all over the damn place. Yeah, I'll leave it in. It'll give you a bit of a laugh, but hopefully it will also help you understand just how difficult it is sometimes to get these filming bits done.
There is the village of Bodgham, and there you know, this is stupid. There it is. There is the castle. As the sun begins to rise at about 5:20 in the morning. That's a view of the castle you don't often see. Because most people don't even come to Ewhurst Green. They've never even heard of it. If my memory serves me correctly, there used to be a lovely cider made round here, Bob Lux.
Now since I filmed this, done a bit of digging. Obviously Bob Lux was sold locally, but I have found that it was actually made in Benenden, not so far down the road, just over in Kent. It needs to be remembered that cider, quite apart from Devon, Cornwall, Somerset, was a traditional Sussex drink as well. We used to drink it all the time round here, especially when the beers started going all gassy and horrible and chemical. Sadly, the campaign for real ale actually played a part in the demise of some of the lovely local ciders we used to have. In my word, Bob Lux was a potent brew, I tell you. I enjoyed a few pints of that in my misspent early 20s, but sadly the business died out. People stopped drinking cider. Bob himself died in 1998, I think it was, and you don't hear anything much about his ciders now, but it was legendary. And of course real ales have made a boom. The ironic thing is the only ciders that were left at that time basically were fizzy, gassy, chemical stuff. It's amazing. The fortunes of one reverses the fortunes of another. But there you are, a bit of information about Bob Lux.
Long since gone, I think. It's not easy being a filmmaker with a conscience. You don't want to invade people's privacy, and yet on the other hand, you want to see what lovely buildings are in places like this. This one, for instance. Oh, a lovely house, isn't it? I'm walking towards the sunlight now. Pattenlands, that's called. Well, this must be an old gateway into one of these little private estates, but I'm actually, my attention has been caught by their weather vane. And I'm not sure, no, I'm going to have to get to a different angle because shadows are just too much on that one. I'm going to try and, can you see it through there? I'll try and get a better angle on it later. You'll find it quite amusing. Here we are. What they call this? Preachers. Now, how about that for a house? What are we looking at here? Some parts of that have got to go back to the 13th century, surely. Definitely 14th century and onwards. Isn't that lovely? Look at those timbers. That's a lovely house. Rectory cottage. This must have been a very religious place at one time. Preachers, rectory cottage, and we're going to find church house later on, and a couple of houses that were an old chapel. The folk in this part of the world were really quite religious folk over many years, and of course, as history tells us, the medieval times, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th centuries and onwards, constant spats between the Catholics and the Protestants. Some quite violent even. Nice little row of cottages there. The birds don't like me being about, that's for sure. But there's a very tastefully converted oast house behind me, and I'm trying to get an angle on it where I'm able to film it but not invade their privacy. Now, how about that? That's a little better, isn't it? You see how the whole oast house and associated buildings have been converted into a property. That's quite something. Ooh. Sun's coming up now. This was quite a thriving village at one time. So this building here was the old post office. You'd have probably had all the amenities, village shop, post office, all that sort of thing. What? I don't know if that still is a working farm down there. Excuse me. What I find quite impressive now, we have a lot of arguments these days about extra houses being needed, and I think this is a perfect example of how a number of what are obviously 1960s, 1970s council houses were slotted into the village in a very sympathetic style of building. Round this nice little green, I doubt very any of them are still council houses these days, but I think that's an example of a very nice bit of meeting a modern need in a rural setting. I could come over this side of the road, because here we have another one of those village signs. Now, there were hardly any before the millennium, and then between the millennium and, well, the Queen's 50th Jubilee, 2 years later, loads of them went up all over the place. And there are some plaques on there. Let's have a look and see what they say, shall we? Best kept small village 1970, best kept small village 1978, best kept village in all Sussex 1979, and winner of South East in Bloom 2015 and 2016. So there you go, quite a pedigree. Now, obscured by trees, admittedly, but that building there, which is now called the Old Chapel, is actually now split into two. Now, from what I can gather, this is sort of early 19th century, goes back a bit more than that maybe. It seems to have been a private house that was then converted to a chapel and then converted back into a private house. Now, I can't really get closer to film it, but there's a window there, and I think it's that one that we're looking straight there that has got kind of columns either side of it, and that was an old doorway. These appear to have been old stables. Now converted into private houses. And we come to the church of St James the Great, where we also have some Commonwealth war graves. There we are, and it's just coming where the sun is coming against the wall there. and we'll take a closer look. Well, we're coming to the end of the village now. Right at the very end is the heart of any community, the local pub. This is one village where the local pub is still thriving. The White Dog, very, very popular, and very difficult to film these because they're behind a hedge. These are the church cottages, 19th century, grade 2 listed so far as I can remember. I think they were originally one cottage, now been converted into two. I guess this would have been where the vicar lived, or rector. Now, the difference between a vicar and a rector. My understanding is that a vicar, that's the front door, a vicar was paid a stipend from the diocese. It gets a bit complicated, church administration. But a rector, so far as I know, I can't really get any higher, unfortunately. The hedges are just too high there, but we're going to go into the churchyard and have a look anyway. Yes, as far as I can gather, the rector made his living out of the parish. And I suppose hence you used to have these big tithe barns all over the place, because the parishioners would bring their tithes, and from those tithes the rector would take his income. And if you're in a rich parish, you got a pretty handsome income. If it was a poor parish, well, not very much. I think the moles have been busy here, look. Look at that. Now, Church of St James the Great, grade 1 listed, very unusual tower. This is a Norman church, probably dating back to the 11th century. That lovely stonework on it. There's a marble font in there, which also probably dates back to the 11th or 12th century. Can we go in and have a look? Yes, we can. Oh, there's a stone here in the ground. A Kempt facets. I wonder if that's the chap who laid the stonework here. Is that a stonemason's mark? My first thoughts are, what a lovely church, isn't it? Look at that. Beautifully kept churchyard. Oh, I wonder if I go this way. Lavender. We can get another look at the church cottages from behind here. There we go. Very nice. This is lovely with the sun just coming up, and this path brings us round the corner to another door. What secrets lie behind it? Was this the vestry door? Is that where the vicar and the choir go to rope up for the morning? These old churches are fascinating places. Norman archway, maybe.
I say Norman, although it's actually been described as showing the transition in architectural style from the Romanesque to the Gothic. So maybe it's a bit later than Norman, who knows. I say it looks fairly plain, and that is because the porch is a much later addition. There was an original one here, but apparently it didn't offer much shelter, so this one was built in its place, and I think that's probably what initially at least gives it a rather plain appearance. But the architecture in this doorway is actually quite something.
Nothing very fancy about this entrance compared to some, but it stands as it does below this tower, which is quite imposing and makes you lose your balance if you're not careful. It's got one of these things in it which I'll talk about in a moment. Oh, this lovely lamp here. Huh. And of course the trees. You can't have a churchyard without some lovely old trees that will tell you a tale or two about the people that have come, the people that have gone. Please shut this wire screen to keep out the birds. Oh, interesting. I very rarely seen such a well looked after, well laid out churchyard. This is really beautiful. Really beautiful. If you're looking for, I suppose, what you might call the rural idyll, you couldn't look much further than this. Now, this church appears to have an example of what you call an enclosed staircase. I could be wrong, but if you look at this, to the right of the clock, and you look up at that turret, and you see it was almost built as an afterthought. And although, yeah, it's a funny sort of thing, but what used to happen was you would build the church tower, and probably the only way of getting up to the bell or whatever it was by a ladder. And years later, very often they would decide they wanted a staircase, and of course there's no room to build a staircase inside. So very often what they did was to build the staircase outside and then build round it in this particular format to make it look like it was always part of the church. But in actual fact it would be a later addition, and it would conceal the outside staircase, which would now be inside, and a lot better for climbing in wet weather.
And indeed, I now know that this was a stair turret, a later addition. This was added in the 14th century. The church itself is mainly built of Wealden sandstone. The unusual spire at the top is said to have been as a result of the top of it being struck by lightning, resulting in the top half being built to a different angle to the bottom one. The shingles you see there are actually wooden. They're chestnut shingles. They were fitted in, I think, if my memory serves me correctly, about 1990, 1991 time. So even they're getting on a bit now. Oh, there you go.
The sheep are waking up now, and I'm just going to try and get a little atmospheric shot here with the sun rising over the village of Ewhurst Green, and with this shot we will complete our visit, which I hope you've enjoyed. Just have a slightly closer look at preachers here. What a lovely place. There is a better angle on their weather vane, and I can honestly say I've seen usually cockerels, chickens, the occasional cat. I have never seen a pig weather vane before. Now that is unusual. And I've just noticed, I've come to one side, and the house we saw, there's some lovely topiary in their garden. Look at that. Isn't that lovely?
And just before we do finally go, I'm deeply indebted to my friend David Niblo and to the church committee, whatever you like to call it, of the church there for very kindly providing me with an informative leaflet about the church where I got a lot of this information from. So thank you all very much for giving me permission to use it, and I'm glad to reproduce from it in the hope that maybe some of you might go and visit one day. This is the font. Now, as I said before, the font probably dates back to the 12th century, but you can see here the only bit of it left really is the bit that sits on top of a more modern pedestal now, but it's certainly a very remarkable survivor. And now we move on to this very interesting window inside the church. It's in memory of one William Jacobson, and his family kept the Launding farm. He was drowned in a pond in his father's garden, and so the family clubbed together to have this window erected. He is seen in this photograph sitting on the Lord's knee with the disciples around him, and when you look at the little quarterfoil above it, which picture will come up in just a moment, that is his mother's face looking down at him. Now William was quite a pious lad, and he was actually saving up to buy what they call a corona. It was basically a candle holder, or a holder for oil lamps. And what happened after he died was his parents emptied his money box, as it were, and they made up the amount, and you will still see this corona in the church today, only the oil lamps are now electrified replicas. An interesting story to finish this video with. Again, my thanks to David and the church council. If you're in that district anytime, do go and take a look. It's a beautiful church, it's a lovely village, and worth stop it. In actual fact, it's so nice, even Baden Powell rented a house there for a while, so you know, that's a good advert for a start, isn't it? Anyway, thank you for coming. Now we're going to move on from here for the next video to more of my autobiographical stuff. I'm off to Dolan and Three Oaks, not sure which order.